It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
All right, since we're talking about 401ks, this next one, I'm actually going to combine three questions because we're all kind of in the same frame. And this is like it's sort of nuts and bolts. And what's funny is two of the questions are the exact same almost, except for they come from two different people. So I'm pretty sure that Tim might have just gotten a different screen name to ask multiple questions to see if it increased his odds. Because here's what, I'm just going to read all the questions to you and you're going to figure out the answers. Number one, what's the penalty for contributing more than $19,500 to your 401k? I'm going to assume that this person is not over 50 because if you're 50 or over, you can do $26,000. And then a second person said, hey, what's the penalty for contributing more than $19,500 to your 401k? And then two, should the 401k be Roth or traditional? So what's the penalty? How do I decide? And then here's another one that ties in with this. Hey, my company failed the non-discrimination test for 401k. What should I do with the money? So there's a lot of stuff in there, but it's so all in the same vein, I'm going to combine all three of those questions.
All those questions, except for one of those, kind of make me cringe just because coming from my accounting background, tax preparation, and it cracks me up. I was talking to one of my great clients. This is at the end of last year, and there was an overfunding situation. And he goes, yeah, but the provider says it's no big deal. They'll just reclass it and restate it. And I was like, yeah, it's no big deal to them, but to you, the ultimate participant, you, the ultimate taxpayer that has to file a tax return on this is going to be a nightmare if you don't fix this before we cross 1231. And that's just coming from my tax preparation background, doing that for 16 years. I know what a complete disaster it is when you overfund retirement plans. So look, penalty is not the right question. Uncle doesn't let you keep the money there. Nope. What the government does is they make you essentially pull that money out, calculate the gains, reclass it back. You will pay taxes on it, but you'll also pay probably a lot of preparation fees, is because you have to, if they did this in your previous tax year, you have to go amend the prior year's tax return too, which is, oh my goodness, it's just a pain.
It's a big mess
for something that was such a simple mistake. So that's why anybody, and I'm going to let you fill in the gaps, but I think the guidance I tell anybody, because we have clients that are in these situations, if you know your employer's plan is structured in such a weird way, by the way, go modernize your retirement plan so you don't have these issues. But if you know that they are restricting highly compensated, first of all, they should go redesign their plan, because there's safe harbors and other things that you can do to get around that. But the second thing is, you probably need to work out a safe level of funding. And I hate to tell you to do that because you're leaving some money on the table, but you do not want to get into a restatement situation every year because your accountant's going to hate you. You're going to hate going through the experience. And it's just not a very productive endeavor to be involved with every year.
Now, here's the good news as it relates to the 19.5 limit specifically, and then I'll speak to the highly compensated piece. Most plans have automatic shutoffs. Yeah. Most plans won't let you contribute over $19,500 if you're not eligible. Now, keep in mind, some will make you, even if you are over 50, they'll make you make an election specifically for the catch-up contribution. Don't just assume that once you fill up your 19.5, the 6,500 is also going to get filled up. Sometimes you have to do that separately. But most plans will have an automatic shutoff so that you can't overfund, except, and we see this all the time, if you change jobs intra-year. Yeah. Say perhaps you worked for one company for January through June of one year and you contributed half of your 19.5. Well, then when you go start with your second company, they're not going to necessarily communicate with the first company to know that you've already put in X amount of dollars. So in years that you change jobs, you always want to make sure that you monitor it very well, because if it turns out that you did overfund, just like Brian said, you have to do a return of that excess contribution. You have to pull out any applicable earnings. The earnings are going to be taxed. If you're under 59.5, they'll be subject to penalty as well. There are some things that happen if you go over that. So the time that you really want to make sure you are very, very careful of it is in the years that you change jobs, because that's when you're most likely to get bitten. If you're someone who's highly comped, I do agree. Here, it's hard to paint this, because what they have to do is every year a 401k does annual testing to determine if they're going to have to refund contributions for highly comp folks. Well, one year they might have to return $1,000 to you. The next year they might have to return $17,000 to you, because it's all dependent upon the employee census. So what I would try to do is change your plan. That's really
restructure the plan.
I would try to restructure the plan so that your highly comp folks don't run into that scenario.
The other thing, because you just said something, I've run into this a good bit with our clients, is even with our own 401k, What happens if you hit 19.5? Because you hit the fail-safe. It stops funding you. You hit 19.5, say, in September. Do you lose out on match?
It depends on how the plan is structured, which is so frustrating. Now, this is something that we did not realize until we realized it, until we actually had this happen in real life, that a lot of plans are set up that, say you get a big bonus in March, and because that bonus comes through, it maxes out your 401k. A lot of plans are written that you only receive the employer matching contribution in periods in which you contribute to the plan. So even though you did 10% contribution to your 401k, if you weren't contributing the rest of the year, you could be missing out on that match. So you want to check to see if your 401k has an employer contribution true-up provision written into it. Though that's the language you want to ask HR to make sure you're not missing out on any employer match.
And we're only in the second month of the year. You might want to just make sure you're doing, like, for 19.5, it's $1,625 a month. It might be in years that you know you have these problems that you overfund because maybe you're a commission-based, your sales. Put a dollar amount instead as a percentage of your income. And it's the same thing with the catch-ups, because we've run into that too, is that a lot of plans, you're over 50. You plan on getting all $26,000 into the retirement plan for the year. They stop at 19.5. You're like, where's my catch-up? You might have to go in there and separately elect to fund that catch-up contribution. So pay attention to those things.